So, uh, I think that now already. Okay, perfect. So finally, we can start. We are very glad that actually we have one of the best experts worldwide, Naumova, and we will have amazing presentation. But as we promised 2 weeks ago at JS Talks conference, we need to draw the winner Microsoft Cloud Challenge, and this will be done now. After that, we will continue with this amazing presentation. Before to have this draw, I would like to show the prize. The prize is Xbox. So if the winner is here, winner will receive immediately this Xbox. If not, we will provide contacts and we will make this actually short ceremony with giving the award probably during the next week. So, Alex.
Cool. So, as we promised as part of the Cloud Skills Challenge, as just there's been like 22 people that fully completed the 3 challenges. So they're all here in this small box, and let's draw one.
Let's see. We have the name Nikolai Ninarski.
Okay, Nikolai Ninarski, most probably not here, but if you're watching the stream, you just got the Xbox. So we'll have like public data on the JS Talks channels to contact and then kind of reach out to us and get the Xbox. So congrats to the winner, and let's go forward with the event.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you from Microsoft. And now I would like to invite Maggie. Everyone knows Maggie Naumova, so there is no need to present who is Maggie. I believe that everyone from world community knows exactly he's one of the best worldwide experts and founder of the Bulgarian data community. So, Maggie, welcome and thank you very much for this awesome commitment from your side, because you are probably the best option to present new features for SQL Server 2022.
Thank you, Mikhail. I don't know if I can live with these expectations, but I'm really thrilled that today I'm part of community release or launch of SQL Server 2022. And I'm really happy that we managed to connect actually Oslo, where I am now, Sofia and Zagreb. I hope our colleagues in the community there can hear us as well. Hi, all. So today we are going to talk, obviously, to talk a lot about SQL Server 2022. And we were happy to understand and to see the launch in Seattle. So that was last week, and this is really amazing because the release is so rich of features that I don't know if one event could be enough for us to discover everything that is included in the release. That probably will take months to see every single feature and how that supports the better workload, how that supports more like a bigger performance of our workload, bigger scalability, and potentially a hybrid stuff in the cloud that we can build with this new version. So let's start then. I hope all of you are yeah, good now, and we can do that. I'm going to show you some stuff. Probably, of course, not all of it, but at least those powerful features that we really waited for a long time, and which could change the way we think about SQL Server on-prem and SQL Server environment. Okay, so the how we I could check the mic quality now. So yeah, I will do that. And then Micho, can you help me with sharing the screen and my presentation now? Okay, I hope
sure.
it will be better.
I will. Yep. Okay.
So too many cables here. Just hold on. Okay, good.
Yeah, we see your screen.
Yes, I do. Okay, thanks. Yeah, good. So SQL Server 2022 and the wheel of power, I would say, because this is how Bob Ward was actually presenting SQL Server 2022, and I like that, the wheel of power, because it says so much things about SQL Server 2022, which could sound very exciting when it comes to what to do next and how to use those features in your workload, in your environment. Of course, cloud connected, that's probably one of the labels of SQL Server 2022. This is the first cloud connected instance, and it means a lot of stuff indeed. So I'm going to show you some of those, some of this, and you will potentially see how we could use the cloud now for disaster recovery and smooth migration, how we could integrate SQL Server 2022 with Azure Purview in order to gain the data catalog, to load the data, metadata, and to enrich the data catalog with all the data that we have in SQL Server 2022. And last but not least, of course, integration with Synapse Analytics. So in this case, we will see much more stuff, I think, in this group of features. We will see much more coming in the next months, because I would say that some of the things are still partially included. You'll see that in the managed instance demo. So cloud connected is the indeed allows us to build a single infrastructure which contains our SQL Server 2022 and gain the most of the benefits from the cloud. Of course, most of you probably, especially those who develop solutions in SQL Server and DBAs, probably they really expect the exciting new feature of the query intelligence. And I would say that we are a few steps to a better, way better SQL Server. So we have built-in intelligence, query intelligence, and in this release, it's most of the features are connected to or use query store. So query store becomes really a core of query intelligence in this release and probably the next releases. Then, of course, security and scalability and availability. So in that direction, we have contained availability group, a long-awaited feature, I would say, which gives us an opportunity to create an availability group with all the dependencies of databases in it, so they can go together and fail over together, so we don't need to maintain users, jobs, and all the stuff. Really exciting part of the release. So contained availability group is something that could help us in a bigger deployment when we really want to maintain all the dependency. It's not a security feature, but it's something that gives us a really good option for increasing the availability. So then we have a lot of new security features. like granular permissions, new server roles, which help us to align with the least privilege. And by the way, which are good in connection with a purview, because now if you in purview integration, you can basically do something like, you can say, okay, give those the group of users permissions to maintain SQL Server or to monitor SQL Server. So in order to do that, I can do that from purview, not from SQL even. So that's a very smooth integration in the data governance process. And connected to that, I have new stuff in SQL 2022 as well. On top of that, we have Defender, of course. We have a new TDS protocol. Is also something in the security part. We have features connected to granular and mask control. So that's really cool. Some of them was just one of those groups. It was so good to have it. And it's there. So data virtualization and object storage is probably something that Microsoft works for a long time, and it's there. It's in data warehouse. It's in Synapse Analytics SQL pool. You can see, you can run Polybase there. You can see data from Azure Data Lake or from storage. Now we have it in SQL Server 2022. So we can create external tables, we can create external data source and external formats, so that we use the same concept, but here in SQL Server 2022. So that integration could happen via REST API or via Polybase, but indeed, it comes in the product by running Polybase. So Polybase installation is necessary, but it brought up the sources that could integrate with SQL Server 2022 without the need to build an ETL and load the data in SQL Server 2022 first. So in this case, we could use 2022 for data warehousing as well, or for just a connection or like a hub of data in this case with those features. And of course, last but not least, we have new coverage of T-SQL, so new stuff for database developers. It's it's about JSON, but not only. So JSON is fine as soon as you keep it like with a good performance and you don't overrate that. So T-SQL though contains a lot more functions. Some of them I hope I will be able to show you, but some of them are very cool to have. So let's start with that, like discovering this wheel of power in SQL Server 2022, of course, with Cloud Connected first. So what about Cloud Connected is what is about Cloud Connection that we are so intrigued and it's so interesting to have? Of course, one of the best things, like a breakthrough in that direction, is the ability to use Azure SQL Managed Instance as a replicated data failover or as a disaster recovery solution. That could be also a read-only replica of your existing availability group, or that could be just an easy way, very smooth way to perform a migration from your existing on-prem SQL Server databases to Azure SQL Managed Instance. So all those cases could be covered extremely smooth and really fast by configuring SQL Managed Instance as a disaster recovery replica for your databases, which you store in SQL 2022. Well, this I'm going to show you, so you will see that in action. And then we have Azure Synapse Analytics. So basically, if Synapse Analytics is something that we already know that it's probably we already know that it's a center of our advanced analytics in the cloud, an analytics platform in the cloud, and it slowly becomes just in recent months we had like several projects for designing a roadmap with Synapse Analytics in the cloud. So people go there with their databases and they use that as a central analytics.
But how that is integrated with SQL Server 2022? So imagine that you don't need to develop Azure Data Factory pipelines, and you just get a thing from your SQL Server 2022 operational databases directly in your Azure SQL Data Warehouse in Synapse Analytics. So that is a link between 2022 and Synapse Analytics, a direct link which is implemented by using self-hosted integration runtime. So it's so cool when you see that some of the elements that you already know, they are used by some features for like building yet another thing. So Microsoft Purview is, of course, something that is cloud-related integration with SQL 2022, because SQL 2022 is just on-prem or Azure virtual machine, part of your infrastructure as a service, which contains data. So in that case, you must, after a while probably, but you must do a data catalog. You must do a data catalog. You must implement a data governance process, and it's very likely to you to choose Purview, at least for data cataloging, and Purview roadmap goes straight to the data governance, to the fully featured data governance product. So in that case, you would like not only to make a data discovery of your data which you store in SQL 2022, but you would like also to be able to force the permission control, or like to have a single area, single zone of your Microsoft Purview, which you can use for doing a flow of work, requesting permissions, and potentially even giving permissions. So that is implemented through system policies in Microsoft Purview for monitoring SQL. So if you integrate with Microsoft Purview, your SQL Server 2022 now, then you can give some users, like for example, Azure Active Directory groups, permissions to directly from Purview to directly monitor your SQL Server. So that's so cool. It saves a lot of time, and it gets to a unified view of data governance in your data area. So yeah, another thing which is part of the cloud connected is probably something that feels really as a hybrid and as a common infrastructure when you bring it with SQL Server 2022, and that's Arc Agent and Azure Execution Agent for SQL Server. So Azure Arc, probably most of you know that Azure Arc is a way to monitor potentially a single infrastructure that you have, no matter that your servers could be on-prem, in Azure, or even in other clouds. So you could, based on the agent or using agent, you could add the server to Azure Arc architecture, and then you can perform a centralized monitoring. You can get benefit of Defender, for example. And with SQL 2022, if you do that, then you will get Azure Active Directory authentication in SQL. So that's really cool, because you can potentially have a single sign-on in this case. And last but not least, there are new stuff like, for example, you can use SQL 2022 with payment mode of pay as a service, so pay as you go. And that's very nice, because this could be part of the overall Azure or hybrid infrastructure that you have. So in this case, you could integrate SQL Server 2022 really smooth in your existing Azure infrastructure, or if you don't have it yet, then you can potentially plan for a hybrid or infrastructure of yours in the future. So what is this about when it comes to business continuity with Azure Managed Instance? So basically, some of you probably know, if you have tried that, that it's not an easy task to set up and maintain a disaster recovery site, especially in Azure. So that could contain a lot of configurations. If you do availability group, then yes, it could be a way to potentially have your replica in Azure as a disaster recovery and use it as a disaster recovery, or you could even have like this file share as part of your availability group cluster in Azure, so that you could use Azure as a third data center in your Windows failover cluster quorum. So no matter what you do, it's not an easy stuff though. It's something that needs planning, needs configuration. It's something that needs a deployment to perform it really carefully. So here we have an extremely easy way to do it. So besides being able to connect SQL Server 2022 with Azure Managed Instance, it's very easy to configure it. So we deploy and configure platform as a service, which just, with the wizard. Of course, we can do it with the comments and all the stuff behind it. And we should, after a while, to understand what's going on behind the scene. But you can deploy that very fast and you can see the result immediately. So what's the point here? There are several breakthroughs here. It's not just connecting SQL Server with the managed instance. That is really a breakthrough, I would say. But as you probably know, Azure versions of the product, they are the most recent versions of the product. Here, with this concept, we are able to restore a backup from Azure Managed Instance to SQL Server 2022, back to SQL Server 2022. That is so cool. So in this case, we can connect those and we can say, okay, that could be a really good case for migrations. And we can do that migration one way, or you can restore the database afterwards just to, for example, have it as a copy. What about failback? So I would say that we should wait a while, because the last option to fail back and forth is, we are not there yet. So in the release of SQL Server 2022 last week, what has been released is just one side or one way of performing a failover. So we have an online failover, that's for sure, but it's one way for now. I would say that despite that it works by using technologies that we already know, it's matches perfectly the timing of November updates of managed instance. So November updates of managed instance are very cool because they enable you to provision a managed instance with those updates, or to potentially apply those updates to an existing managed instance. So what you have is a little bit like, the better way or easier ways to perform a networking configuration for your managed instance. And then you have a pausing of managed instance. That was a so long waiting feature. So you can pause a managed instance. You know that managed instance is not a cheap service, right? So if you are able to pause it when you don't use it, that's so cool. And you have a few more additional features which are added to managed instance. So now it's even more tempting to think about SQL Server 2022 to managed instance configuration. It uses a built-in distributed availability group as a technology. So basically it uses availability group behind the scene. You can have a primary or user database, which is read-write in your primary replica in on-prem 2022. And then you can have a read-only replica in your SQL Server and in your managed instance. So the managed instance link replicates databases by using distributed availability group technology. It's you can have a single node here, so it's not necessary, absolutely necessary, to have like availability group configuration. You can have it like just one database, and for now, basically, you can have just one database here. Of course, you need to have a secure connection. So basically, what's the way to do that from the connection perspective? You can use VPN, ExpressRoute. VNet peering, etc., or you can provision your virtual machine in the VNet of the managed instance so that they can see each other. But from the networking configuration, it's kind of like expected to have this prerequisites. How the connectivity is performed from the security perspective? Well, it's certificate-based authentication, of course. So as a distributed availability group, assuming that we live in different domains, for example, so in this case, we have certificate-based authentication between services. And let's see that. So I'm switching to my SQL 2022, and you can see that I have 2 connections now. So those connections are performed. One of those is to my on-prem, or let's say SQL 2022 Azure virtual machine, and I have SQL 2022 managed instance. So what do I have in this case is a configuration without like specifying anything else, basically. I don't have anything on my managed instance, unfortunately, because I don't fit in the zone that I provisioned. So I provisioned my managed instance in Norway because it's like, yeah, a few kilometers away from where I am, the data center, I mean. So, but it doesn't qualify yet for November updates and all those cool features of managed instance. But anyway, and by the way, one of those cool features is to provision managed instance for like minutes, not for like 6 hours, for example. So that's really nice. So my virtual machine is provisioned in the VNet of managed instance. That's why I'm connecting to the managed instance by private endpoint in this case. You can enable managed instance with a public endpoint though, even though it's not recommended, of course. So networking configuration is something that we should pay attention when we do something like this. Okay, good. So let me then start by trying to configure the link to my managed instance. So I'm saying, please do replicate that database for me. And I have some checks. So all of them are green, but it's important to understand what are those checks about. So first of all, is version check. Is it only for 2022? Well, if you install some stuff on the previous version of SQL Server, like you have a prerequisite, then you can have this as well. Then you have always on enabled. That's kind of like expected, but that doesn't mean that you need to have a cluster on your SQL Server 2022. It's just you enable always on. Of course, the security like membership, and there are 2 trace flags that are recommended to be switched on. Those trace flags are connected to the speed of synchronization between your on-prem or SQL Server 2022 and the managed instance. So we need to have those in order to have a better seeding of our database and a faster synchronization. And of course, database master key should be presented. So that's kind of like expected because of the certificates authentication. Then I have my database list, and here is the database that qualifies or meets all the requirements. What does it mean? Well, to have a full backup and to be in the full recovery model. So those are the requirements basically. And then, of course, I'm signing with my account. So let's see if I will get my, yeah, okay, good. And then, yeah, this is my managed instance, which has been recognized by the wizard in the corresponding subscription and the resource group. I have an endpoint, defined certificate, of course, and the availability group. So what the wizard will perform for me is a local availability group on my instance and the distributed availability group which will take care about the synchronization between my SQL Server 2022 and managed instance. So let's see. There are several steps that will be performed here. So, of course, certificates part, exporting certificate from my SQL Server and importing it back to my managed instance. Then it will create my availability group. As you can see, those steps are really fast. A distributed group has been created. What is it's performing now, and it's still in progress, is joining, which means seeding my database. So here we go. We have our database here. Let me refresh that. Obviously, my database is synchronized, and let me refresh my managed instance now. Here we go. So I got my database. Let me try to zoom it a bit. Here we go. So, yeah, I have this and this as a managed instance. So what about the availability group then? Well, let's see. We have two. This is the primary, or let's say my availability group here. And then it's the distributed availability group, which has two replica, my primary of the availability group and my managed instance. Okay, now let's see what we have here. So if I run that script against my source, my SQL server, then you can see that my SQL server now is a read-write replica, and it has this as client's table. And then let me do the same stuff on my managed instance. So my managed instance, this is my private endpoint. It's read-only now, and this is my table there. So here we go. I just had my data replicated to my managed instance. What about inserting a record? Here we go. So we are going to hire Kent Petition in our, here we go. Now we have him. Let's see. Yeah. So now we have, I got it twice. He must be thrilled, right? So, and here is my my new record. So I got two new records, and they were immediately synchronized in my managed instance. Okay, good. What about the failover then? So let's try. Let me try to perform a failover. So as I mentioned, when it comes to failover, it's currently it's supported just one way of failing over. Here we go. Yeah, that's my subscription indeed. And that's a planned failover or forced failover. So forced failover is, of course, with the data loss, potentially data loss, or planned failover. Anyway, I can confirm that everything is stopped and they are in a synchronized state currently. They are synchronized actually. So I could say I confirm the workload is stopped, but it will do those checks for me anyway, and it will potentially transfer the last transaction block to my managed instance. I will delete availability group. I don't need it anymore. So it's one time, as I mentioned. I believe that we will have this back and forth very soon, but still, here we go. So you can see that it's a synchronous replication mode so that I don't lose any transactions, committed transactions. Then it checks the LSN numbers to try to see if everything is fine, and then it performs a manual failover for me. So in this case, I will just, okay, so that's why. Here we go. So then I am doing this. Why is that read write? Well, because I just got a failover. The availability group has been deleted. So I have my database on-prem, existing database on-prem, not touched by the wizard. So I can delete the database, of course, but it's not that the purpose that I have now. more important thing is here. So you can see read only now. And if I run it, you can see that it transfers to read write. So now I have my database in my managed instance. What could I do to get it back? Well, I could do something like this. So let me insert a new record. For example, yeah, Canet also deserves to be part of the team. And then what I could do is I could perform a backup to a URL. So from managed instance, you can back up the database to your URL, and you can say, okay, that's my store, that's my Azure blob store, and this could be executed now. Oh yeah, of course. So that could have a different name, of course. It's 24th now, right? Here we go. So I will do backup on 24th. Here is my backup. And then what I could do is I could do restore. So here we go. Of that backup, I can perform restore, which is really nice because the versions are like SQL Server from Azure to SQL. So it's the same backup here. Here we go. So now let's see my client. Oops, not that. It's a new database that I've created. Yeah, here we go. Canet is here. Yoo-hoo. So we can do that stuff really smooth, and it's about some really simple configuration that we can make, and that could work for us. So what about the other features though? So they say that Azure Synapse Link is probably one of the most important stuff that we have, and I could kindly agree with that because as I mentioned, Synapse becomes our central advanced analytic platform in the cloud. So we can do so much stuff in Synapse, and Synapse has a lot of links to many sources, like a direct link to Cosmos DB for getting analytical container data from analytical container. You have link to a Dataverse. So you could do analytics on top of the Dataverse stuff. If we can connect what we have as data in SQL Server 2022 with Synapse Analytics, that is really cool, because instead of transforming data or doing ETL, which basically goes through like extracting data from SQL on-prem, then having that stored in a storage like Azure Data Lake, for example, and then loading back to relational is kind of like feels like too much extra stuff that we are doing. So if we can connect those two directly, then we could save a lot of time and potentially could get our data synchronized in this case. So for that, we have this new link, which we called Azure Synapse Link for SQL Server. And it is defined in your on-prem SQL Server or SQL Server 2022. We have to perform several installation or prerequisites must be implemented in advance. Like, for example, self-hosted integration runtime is something that we need to configure on our SQL Server. So self-hosted integration runtime will be responsible for pushing data or like connecting on-prem with Synapse Analytics. Then we must create a linked services, which we create in our Synapse Analytics workspace, and then we create link, which we do for a specific database. So let me show you that stuff then. So here is my my instance, which I'm going to use for link with Synapse Analytics. It's 2022, but the release candidate version. And then I'm going to switch to my Synapse Analytics. So what I've done here is I've created a link. That link currently works as a continuous transfer of changes that I make to my data in on-prem in 2022 with SQL pool. So basically what I have here is the following. So I have customers. This is my customer table. Here is my customer table. You can see that. And I do have my customer table here, so you can see it in my database in on-prem. This is synchronized continuously. So if I make a change to that customer, then I could expect that to be synchronized with my SQL dedicated pool in Synapse Analytics. So how that happened, let's try them. So let's try to move that guy. Oh no, yeah, that guy, from Oslo to Sofia. So here we go. I have this customer. This is the customer ID. So I'm updating the customer city now, and I'm saying, okay, please move to Sofia now for a while. And then I am going to my Synapse Analytics workspace. Here is the customer. He still lives in Oslo. And then, oh yeah, let's do some stuff. Yeah, probably after a while, or hopefully we will get there. Yeah. Oh. Okay, let's see what's going on then. Do we have a monitoring of that stuff? Yes, we do. Here we go. So it's, yeah, it's still doing something. Oh, yeah, of course. So let's do, okay, so let's do another one, by the way. What I have now is, the good thing is that you can troubleshoot. So at least I know that there is a problem. But let's see how I can do another link for configuring a different database. What I have pre-configured is SQL Server links. Here we go. Yep. So what I used up until now was this link. I have another link which I have configured, and this is a link service basically. So it connects my Synapse Analytics with my on-prem SQL Server 2022, and it says, okay, I'm using this integration runtime, which is self-hosted, and it runs okay on my server. And then this is my server name, and this is my database. So I am doing that. Let's test that connection. Yeah, that's fine. And then I could say, okay, then I can use that to create a new link. Here we go. With my SQL Server through that linked service, T-SQL, that I've just created. And here are all the tables from my T-SQL database. Here we go. So I can choose, I can pick a table, for example, production product. And I can say, okay, then, please do use that table. My target pool is SQL Data Warehouse pool. And then please continue with specifying the power, the compute power that I'm going to be using with my link connection. So I have compute power, which will be used 2 + 2 driver cores. I'm saying that it will be continuous replication. Continuous replication means once something is changed in on-prem, it will be immediately pushed by self-hosted integration runtime to Synapse Analytics to a storage zone in a data lake, for example, and then it will be inserted to my SQL. So obviously, for that purpose, I need a storage, and I will have my landing zone. So my landing zone will be, for example, this container. And then I'm generating the token, good, for connecting to my landing zone. Here we go. What I'm doing now is I have to specify the target table. So the schema should exist. And this is something that I need to have, like production products schema. And then I need to define if this is a round robin or cluster a distribution type, or if I do, for example, replicated or hash distributed. Probably round robin will be the fastest for ingestion of the data. And then I can say, okay, that will be cluster count star index. So basically, I'm ready for publishing my connection and potentially for starting the link. So I'm going to publish that connection now. Here we go. So one connection per database. You can have many. Of course, I can do better with a naming convention, but that's not the point now. So let me start that. This will start the compute nodes, which will be responsible for getting data from my self-service host runtime engine, storing the data in my data lake. Remember, I just stored it as just specify the container, and then loading data to SQL table. So this will be the responsibility of my connection. Can I have the connection on a schedule? Yes. So it was just the regular scheduling, but what they did on the release was they put a 60-minute max as a schedule. So that means you say basically that every 60 minutes, your link will start and it will sync the new data, the delta, which has been changed from your source to your data warehouse here. We have several options to stop this. We can stop, and then we can potentially truncate the lock on data source. We can pause, which will basically pause the synchronization, but it will keep the data so that if I resume, then I will be able to just get the delta, not the full snapshot of my data. So we have different options to set up that according to our workload in on-prem environment. What is the technology behind the scene here? So the technology behind the scene is basically they use change data capture. So what happens in on-prem is it creates an additional schema with the change feed, which relies on a change data capture and transaction log reading of the transaction log file. So that means we need to be careful with that implementation in our workload on-prem. But if we do it as like, for example, for some of the tables, if we do it like on a continuous basis, then it's safe for the transaction log. On the other hand, if you have like less modifications, then we could potentially do it on a 60-minute schedule, or we can stop it and then we can just restart it every single day, and then we'll get the full snapshot of data from on-prem to your server. So let's get back to that, and let me show you basically how that happens in what is happening in the behind the scene in my container. So here is my link stage. Yeah, not yet. So it's starting. Yeah, it will take a while. The cool thing about it is that we have an option to do that direct connection between the tables in on-prem and your Synapse link. So we could drop and create a table. We could do transaction consistency across the table. So basically that means that you could wait for several transactions with the connected tables to complete so that you get all the transactions in Synapse Analytics. Well, that could be possible, or you get per table transfer. That's good. So let's see. Yeah, here we go. So I got my folder and I got my table. So that's basically the production table. So you can see that I have data, and the data are basically the JSON, the schema, and the copy of the data. So the storage is used. This is a procare file, so I can basically say, okay, run that for me and see. Let's see what I have. So this should be a list of products. Here we go. And now I have a list of products stored in my container. So it uses the storage, that link compute uses the storage, and it creates the table for me, and it loads the data in it. So let's go and see the table itself. Yeah, workspace. And let's do a refresh here. So I'm expecting to have production product. Here we go. That's my new table. And yeah. So I could just update. Let's see how that works. Yeah, so that's monitoring of the link connection. Yeah, that one works good, really. So I could rely on that connection, and I could potentially do continuous updates of my products here. So if I do this, for example, product ID 1, I have this price, and I could go back to my server in my T-SQL database, and I could say, okay, now, can you give me my products? Yeah, here we go. So now I can say update my T-SQL. Okay, set unit price equals to unit price multiplied by 2. That's kind of like Christmas, yeah, increase of the price. Here we go. Where, of course, where product ID equals to 1. Okay, let me do that update so you can see how that works. Here we go. So I should expect that to be updated really soon. So let me refresh that. It takes some time, definitely. So a couple of minutes, probably. Don't do that to me. 30. What did I do? Wasn't it 2? Ah, yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Good. How that it makes calculations here. So, yeah, here we go. Oh, here is my product. Oh, okay. So, okay. So I was about to blame here that he cannot count. But okay, obviously it works. So this is what we have behind the scenes. So we can have a store here, and we can ingest data in our staging table in data warehouse, and then we could potentially do ETL in the data warehouse, like by using store procedures, for example, to load a store schema. Not mentioning that when you have those data in the data warehouse ingested by using that link, we could do a lot of analytics and the combination between the data warehouse and potentially the data that you have in the data lake, machine learning stuff, and all that stuff. Okay, good. So now let me finish with the cloud part. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. So the last, probably one of the most important features that we already have in SQL Server 2022 is ability to use the data lake virtualization and object storage. So via Polybase or REST API, we could create an external table, and we could use for K, JSON, CSV, or Delta format without loading the data, but just querying the data the same way we do in SQL Data Warehouse and Azure Synapse Analytics. We can do backup and restore to S3 compatible storage. So this integration is already in place in SQL Server 2022, which is really cool. I mentioned the Purview integration for automatically scanning SQL Server data and set up control on monitoring SQL Server through Purview, not through SQL Server. So it's a beginning of the good data governance, I would say. When it comes to Arc enabled of SQL Server, I would say that if we manage to, or if we decide to include Arc enabled, by the way, it's part of the setup of SQL Server, so you can include the Arc enable engine in the beginning of the setup. So your SQL Server could be Arc enabled from the day one. then you can have those agents and you can perform role-based access policy deployments, SQL Server inventory, health assessment for like checking configurations and potentially isolating some stuff which is not okay, not according to the best practices of configuring SQL Server. You have advanced threat protection and Defender. And last but not least, as I mentioned, you can use Azure Active Directory single sign-on for SQL Server 2022, and you can switch to pay-as-you-go billing. Okay, so now we covered cloud-connected part of SQL Server. So I'm about to talk about built-in intelligence. Misha, do we have any questions from somewhere? No?
Hi, Maggie. I don't think, but let's check. Any questions? No questions, at least from Sophia.
From Sophia and from
Damir.
Michal, can you hear me?
Damir?
Yeah.
Yes.
No questions.
Okay, then let's continue. I hope you have enough beers. Okay. Yes. That's good because I'm postponing mine, so a little bit. Then, then okay. Let's do some other stuff. So I will show you. I'm going to disconnect from my managed instance. And I'm going to show you two things which are part of building query intelligence. So first of all, building query intelligence, probably most of you know that it's not new. It's something that has been included in the product since 2017. And every single version of building query intelligence adds more and more features so that we get out of the box immediately after migration better plans, better performance of our queries without changing the code. So the building intelligent query processing is about not changing anything, but just getting a benefit of all those new features, improving the execution plans. In SQL Server 2022, we have Query Store as probably one of the core elements of building intelligence. So Query Store. Query Store support for read-only replica. Oh, finally! So that is something that we've been waiting for so long, because I can see after several years of the experience with my customers with an availability group they have as configuration, they tend to overload to read-only replicas. I don't know why, but they see exciting feature to run more and more reports on read-only replicas, and suddenly every other replica is potentially doing well on workload and synchronization and all the stuff. And suddenly you can see through the monitoring tools that the asynchronous replica, which is usually a disaster recovery one, it's so overutilized and you cannot do a lot of stuff to optimize that. At least you cannot even do a monitoring in the query store. So now we have a good scenario of having read-only replicas or query store support for read-only replicas, so that I can see the expensive queries and we can tell the customers, hey, seriously, we probably need to create a data warehouse server and not use the asynchronous disaster recovery server for data warehousing and advanced analytics. But anyway, that's really something that we needed for a long time, and it's so nice that we have it. And then we have query store hints. So if we want to shape plans with no code changes, then this is the way we should do it. So in previous version of SQL Server, what we did was if we couldn't change the code, we had to create plan guides. But yeah, don't say plan guides are not the best thing that you can do, and the best state to be in with those, especially if you do migrations or all the stuff. So it's yeah, it's tricky to use them. So basically, what they do here is they use Query Store for that, and these are the hints that we can do in Query Store, which enables a huge set of scenarios covered by Query Store in this case. So what is the new stuff here? So the new stuff in the Query Store is we have degree of parallelism feedback. You probably remember the feedback that we have up until now. I mean memory feedback, memory grant feedback. Now we have two more. So degree of parallelism and cardinality estimation feedback. What is that about? Well, when the query runs, intelligent query processing is about getting the data back to the query optimizer, not just going one way. Just run the query without taking care how the query actually run in order to adapt the query somehow or the next executions that the query has. So in this case, intelligent query processing is trying to get the data dynamically during the runtime and get that as a feedback so that the next execution of the query is a little bit better or is adapted to the needs. This has been done very successfully with memory grant because if you run a little bit more, like expensive queries, you can end up, or you have a cardinality estimation error or like parameter smithing issues or something which changes or require more memory during the runtime of the query, then it's very likely you to observe a slow run of a particular query because it cannot change the memory without like knowing that there is a problem. So memory grant feedback was a feature added in the previous version of SQL Server, which helped in adapting the memory of queries that you run several times. So in that case, the memory will be adjusted and you potentially will consume the right amount of memory when you run your query. Well, the same stuff happens here in the degree of parallelism, but how is that connected to Query Store actually? Well, all the stuff is saved in Query Store because memory grant feedback, degree of parallelism feedback, cardinality estimation feedback, all that feedback that is gathered from the query run, it could disappear if you perform a failover, for example, in your availability replica, right? So you start from the beginning again. So if you store, if SQL Server manages to store all that stuff in Query Store, then it could sync with the database and it could be used more efficiently when you run your new queries. So all that feedback now is stored in Query Store. What is degree of parallelism? Well, degree of parallelism is adjusting the degree of parallelism, obviously, based on the run of a query. Then we have cardinality estimation feedback, which is also adjusting the scene mode for a specific query. So we know that we can adjust for a database when we migrate a database, right? So we could adjust it by using hints, for example, as well. But now we have it for some queries which will run slower after the migration. The cardinality estimation feedback could adjust based on the input of the runtime and say, okay, now we can try to potentially lower the cardinality estimation or cardinality estimation mode then run the query again. Then after the next run, basically you do, then it will compare with the data saved in Query Store and it will decide if this is better or not. The same is true for doc feedback. So it will lower down, it will never go up, by the way, automatically. So it will lower down the current degree of parallelism a step down, and then it will gather the runtime statistics if it's better, if it query runs better, and then it will potentially store the last confirmed or committed doc feedback data then if it's not okay, if it's not confirmed, then it will go lower and lower, of course, with some thresholds at the end. But this adapting of the query and combining that with query store guarantees a really good stuff at the end of the day for without changing anything. You just migrate and you could expect better plans. Good. So probably one of the key features here is parameter sensitive plan optimization, because it resolves a long problem which persisted really long time in SQL Server, and that's parameter sniffing or parameter sensitive plan. So parameter sensitive plan is a plan which it will be reused for different values of the parameter, but just because it's cached and reused doesn't make this plan proper for all those values. So in that case, we run some queries way slower because of that single cached plan in procedure cache. So parameter sensitive plan optimization resolve that stuff. So let me show you both. Let me show you query store hints and parameter sensitive plan optimization, so you can see how that works and how this could produce better plans in your case. Good. So I'm going to start with query hint first, so that I can see the case with the query hint, and then I'm going to show you the parameter sensitive plan then. Good. So I'm using this database first. Like this database is called properties, so property MLS. So I am clearing the query store so that I store from scratch. Then I am enabling the query store. Yeah, of course. So I need to go to that database first. Not trying to enable that on master database. No, that will not work. So yeah, query store should be read right now. Here we go. And then we have these hints in the query store. So we have this query store query hints, which will enlist all the hints currently created. I don't expect to have one because I'm just enabling them. And then here is the histogram of one of the tables or statistics, property agent ID, non-cursor index on property agent ID, and you can see that basically by statistics, by having the statistics and by data shown by statistics, I have a discrepancy here, which is for agent ID 101, I have a lot more data, like more rows. Good. So that means I will probably end up with a not very cool plan in my case. So let me include execution plan in this case. So if I run this plan first, then I expect this plan to perform a scan for me, which is basically true. So the query runs in parallel just because I haven't set up anything about max degree of parallelism and cost threshold of parallelism here. So CTOP is by default 5. You know, defaults will never change in SQL Server, even with this version with powerful changes. So some things just don't change. And then I have my cluster index scan running in parallel, then I have sort operation, and I have parallelism. So obviously the query runs for many rows. And then I am reusing the plan, but now I am running just 3 records and I'm using the same plan. So it's overkill, of course. Just for 3 records, I am consuming the same amount of resources, probably the same duration, and all the stuff is the same. So that query is definitely overkill. That query plan is overkill. So then let me find that query. Let's do something about that. So let me find that query in the query store. And let me see, the query ID is number 10. So what I'm saying here is, please do set a hint for my query number 10, and let the hint be option recompile in this case. Okay, so let's do it. And then it will appear in my list of query store hints. Here we go. So I got this query hint for my query number 10. What about now running the same stuff? So yeah, here is my plan. And then here is my new plan. Here we go. So that's way better, right? So this plan is adapted for 3 rows and it uses key lookup operation. So bookmark. That's cool. And now I don't need to change the code, and I don't need to do anything like plan guides like I did before. And I can potentially, yeah, I can clean that. But what is important to consider here is what will qualify as a query hint. So basically what I can do is, yeah, I could say max grant, I could say legacy cardinality estimator, I could say compatibility level, of query optimizer. So basically I could put many hints, optimize for unknown, for example. So you could do a lot of stuff with this query store hints. Well, according to option recompile, I probably don't need to do that with that new feature that I mentioned, which, remember, that was parameter sensitive plan optimization, or PSP. So let me show that. Same case, but with PSP. So I'm using a worldwide importance database. Sorry. And then let me show you the same stuff here. So the supplier count. I have suppliers 4 and 5, which have a huge discrepancy in their values comparing to the other suppliers here, like selling more stocks to those. Good. So then I'm running, so those are 4 and 5. So then I'm running number 2, like supplier number 2. Here we go. Of course, execution plan. Yeah, that's my execution plan. So this is the execution plan, obviously, is the right one. And then I could run in a different connection here. Here we go. Yeah, of course, the execution plan, sorry. Yeah, because the query will take a while, and that's why I stopped and run it again in order to gain the execution plan of this query. So you saw that I'm clearing the cache, which means the plan with the lookup operation will basically not run or not be used in this case. So it's still running. What I'm trying to force here is when the query runs with expensive parameter value, then this will form the plan of the other queries and vice versa. So if I didn't run the procedure cache here, then I will get a plan which is far from optimal for this value of the parameter. So both cases are not okay. So the execution plan in this case is, of course, very expensive in order to fit to the workload now, which is good, which is correct. But what about running this again? So you can see that basically, yeah, and it ran way way slower. So in this case, it uses the same plan. If I run a workload like this, then it could be really slow for me. So that means I could end up with the workload running for much more time and potentially causing performance issues of the client. So what should I do? I should just switch the database to 160. But let me do that. Here we go. So nothing is basically changed. It's just switching the compatibility level. So now I am doing this. Here we go. Yep. And then the other plan. And then I will get back to the first one. And then you will see that the plan basically adapts somehow to what I am running. Does it mean that I'm doing recompile? Not at all. And it's good that I'm not doing recompile because that will save some CPU. So doing recompiles all the time is probably not the best way to overcome this issue. So even though you could do it with the hints in the query store, it's not the best way to troubleshoot that parameter sniffing issue. So you will see the expensive plan here. Here we go. Yeah, that's my plan. And then switching back. Here we go. So this is the parameter sniffing fixed or part of 2022. So what should we do as a health checks then? How should we help customers in this case? They will not have any issues with the parameter sniffing. So how that happens? Well, that happens in the following way. So it works like this. Oh, not that. So what you saw is this part. When we have one single plan cached in memory, right? But what we have with the PSP optimization is basically you execute a store procedure with parameter 1, then you execute store procedure with parameter number 10. And because those have discrepancies according to statistics, then we will end up with 2 plans in cache. So instead of caching 1 plan, we will have 2 plans in cache in this case. So this plan will be optimal for that procedure, and that plan will be optimal for that procedure. So in general, what it does is it runs, when you run parameterized query, then it creates a dispatcher plan. So dispatcher plan is a multiple plan with the conditions. So basically it calculates the possible query variance up to 3, and then it splits the query variance, and then based on the dispatcher plan and the value of the parameter, it goes to a specific query variant which contains the execution plan. So that query variant could be different than the other. So we have 3 possible ways basically to run that query based on the dispatcher plan. And if I get a little bit more in the detail here, so let's see. Here is my parent query. Yeah, query ID 1 is my parent query, and you can see that it doesn't contain anything. It's just a query ID of 1. But if I run this, here we go. So then you can see that I have a total of 3 queries in this case. Here we go. Query 1 is my dispatcher query, and query 2 and 3 are my query variants. So this query 2 and 3 are just a different variants with the different predicates in this case. So this is my parent query. So how do I know that? Let's see a little bit more as a query plan in this case. Here we go. So those are my queries. Query 1. Oops, yeah. This is my dispatcher plan. So that's a multiple plan. Now it depends. Yeah, it's kind of weird, you know, like multiple plan operator, right? I should. I would like to see a little bit more information than that, but probably it will come after a while. So then I have one query, which is my lookup bookmark operation, and you can see that this query goes with query variant ID 1, and then I have my second query, which goes with the query variant number 3. Here we go. So if I have something in the middle, then I will probably have like even either more parent queries or more variants of the existing one up to 3. Good. So obviously we have that also solved in our SQL Server 2022. So what we have is how do we use that? So in practical way, we migrate to SQL Server 2022. What should we expect? Well, we should expect to have out of the box immediately after migration and without changing the compatibility level of your source database, you should be able to have optimized plan forcing, which is like persisting the plan forcing and reducing the compilation overhead of potential forced plans. So all those plans that are forced will not recompile again. They will use partial stuff out of the compilation they have. And then you have dot feedback, just like this when you migrate. If you switch to compatibility level 140 plus, then you will gain memory grant feedback percentiles and persistent, which is adjustment of the way they calculate memory grant feedback so that it goes not like this all the time, but it's just calculate the percentile and then adjust the value so that you see better results when you rerun your queries with the different parameters. Then you will have memory grant feedback persistent. And then if you switch to the new compatibility level, to the newest compatibility level, then you will gain parameter sensitive plan optimization and cardinality estimation feedback. So basically, out of the box, just by upgrading, you will have some of the next generation IQB setting. And they encourage us to just do a compatibility level change so that we get everything. Good. Well, those are the kind of like the most popular features. Probably the features which are like labeled 2022 features, but we have a lot more than that in the product that it's hard to even enlist all of them. And I choose just a few more, which I think are really good and really promising or long waiting features, which are part of the engine and they could do better for our workload so we can use them. Important storage engine scalability and management improvements are system page light concurrency enhancement. So for those of you who have a long experience with the DB, with the administering of SQL Server, you know that the TameDB is something that takes some time of yours during the maintenance and troubleshooting. So page load contention is not new. It's not something that has completely gone away. With the SQL Server 2019, we still have some stuff like page load contention on GOM and SCOM pages when several sessions try to update or create heavily create more objects, and they could compete on updating GOM and SCOM pages. So in that case, we could face some delays of that kind in SQL Server 2019. Here, we could think like we could accept that TameDB database, most of the issues with the TameDB database have been fixed already, and we're good to go. So TameDB scales really well in SQL Server 2022. Then we have buffer pool parallel scan, something very cool as well. I will explain that in the later slide, but it's about machines which have a lot of memory, like for example, terabyte or more of memory. And then you can face some issues with scanning of the buffer pool because of a single threaded buffer pool scan. So scanning a buffer pool in that case could be really slow, and you could feel like you have some delays with those buffer pools or those machines. You probably know that for some version of SQL, or like starting SQL Server 2019, we have accelerated database recovery. So accelerated database recovery is becomes really critical for systems which are availability groups, for availability groups or for failover clusters when you have a restart or recovery of the database on failover. So accelerated database recovery makes the recovery process instantaneous. And they had some improvements, so you could expect that to be even faster in SQL 2022. Well, I think that we have like two features, two enhancements that are very cool, long waited. I would say that from the cluster column store perspective, we have ordered cluster column store finally in SQL Server 2022. We have that in data warehouse in SQL dedicated pool. So in-memory OTP for managing large memory allocations for in-memory objects when you have like more memory on the back. And I love those. So it's like, yeah, I know that it's really annoying. I know that it's a pain to have XML data in the database. And yeah, I'm trying to avoid that. But some customers just have them. And you cannot rewrite everything, basically, right? So they tried, they tried hard to remove those XMLs from the database. Some of them did shredding of like XML to relationals outside of database because, you know, SQL Server is probably the slowest application server for doing that stuff. So it's you need to go relational, right? So XML is far from that. And the problem with XML is also that it consumes a lot of space, really. So, and if you run slow on like processing XMLs, then you say, okay, I'm going to create an XML index. But seriously, that XML index is so big that it like database like blows as a size. And yeah, what they have is one of those features when you need it, you need it. That's it. So yeah, XML compression. We have XML compression. So hopefully we could like shrink that stuff with the XML indexing, and we could potentially even gain some performance improvements, you know? So we will be able to read less pages for doing the same queries. Then you have a shrink database with low priority. Yeah, hate that as well. So yeah, I always say, no, you don't shrink your databases, especially with auto shrink. Never ever do that. So what is this low priority about? Well, if you run a shrink database, then and shrink file, by the way, then you have at the end of the operation, you have a lock which is held on the database. So with low priority means the same as alter index rebuild with low priority, so that you have this shrink holding on and staying at a low priority until you finish something, or the opposite. Well, I hope, yeah, you plan for doing the shrink database with not intensive hours, because shrink database, I would like to see the algorithm that has been changed here, but yeah, it's not. So back to TempDB, what has been done in TempDB and what are these improvements in 2022 with the GAM and SGAM pages? So if we think back in time, basically the TempDB improvement starts in SQL Server 2014 with some stuff there. Then in 2016, they managed to include the allocation optimization of pages in TempDB in the product. So we no longer needed to switch the trace flag for that. Then in 17, they managed to fix the PFS for improving concurrency. And in 19, the big breakthrough was allowing the concurrent PFS updates. So it dramatically increased improved the contention between session, which creates a lot of or drops a lot of objects because they needed to update the PFS page. But the GAM and SGAM updates, concurrency updates stays in the product. So now they basically fixed that. So I would say that because of all those, it's not just one single version of the product, you know, so it's a lot of work that has been done since several versions in the product. So now we can say, yeah, we very likely managed to get rid of all the page load contention which happens in TempDB, and our TempDB could be really fast. Very cool feature, I really love it, is a buffer pool scan operation. So as I mentioned, when you have a lot of memory, like terabyte or so, then scanning the buffer pool can be so slow that you say, what is going on? It's not possible to like create a database, and creating even a small database to take that much of a time, or let's say backup restore operation are so slow, or always on failover events, those could be really slow, or check TP, lock restore. So this checkpoint operations, so those are internal operations, right? So getting data out of and synchronizing with the data file. So if you have those delays, and it's really annoying because you add more memory and you're like increasing the performance issues in this case, and it's because scanning of the buffer pool. The scanning of the buffer pool was serial scan up until now. So now we have it as parallel scan. So parallel scan greatly improves all those operations, and you could see that immediately after upgrading. What I like though is the backward compatibility. So they managed to include that diagnostic part in the error log. So if you see something like this as a delay, then it's very likely to see errors in cache. So you could potentially even create extended events to find out if that is a problem of yours and of your environment, and potentially plan for upgrade. So for customers running mission critical OLTP systems and data warehouse environments, it's really cool to have that. So I'd say it's not only that, it's basically what we have. We have a lot of features which are just built in the product. They come in the product, and we will just feel that it runs faster due to them, but you will probably not see them as a flagship features of SQL Server 2022, like the ones that I've shown you. But those are really important. Like, for example, do you know that in SQL Server 2022 we have instant file initialization for the transaction log, as well, not only for data files? Isn't that cool? Absolutely. So we hope that the transaction log will grow faster. Well, that could be bad, by the way, so we should monitor that. Anyway, so VLF algorithm, it's been changed again. So yeah, of course, in order to reduce the potential fragmentation of transaction log. So a lot of work has been done on spin locks in order to optimize the spin lock algorithm, and in order to reduce the CPU contention and the CPU peaks. Good. And the last part is, extending T-SQL. So basically, when it comes to T-SQL, we just want more. We try to do more. We try to get more functions. And we are always excited when we get new stuff in T-SQL in the product, because we can do better from the development perspective. And you can see that the coverage of T-SQL is really big in the new version. So we have new function in the JSON part, but it's not only JSON. So you can see that we have a lot of stuff here. So I'm not going to cover all those, but some of them are really cool. We have greatest least. I'm going to show you that. I'm so tempted to show you that. And then we have buckets, date buckets. We have generate series, so time series functions, which are available in Synapse. Some of them came into the product here, so that's very cool. We have bit functions, and we could use window clause if windowing functions, if we have a window matches in some of the functions. So that's cool, and it's not distinct from. Oh, yeah, that doesn't sound really cool from performance perspective to me, but it actually does. It is. So don't be worried. At least the tests and what Itzik shared, it was really cool. So if you have an index, then it's very likely that is not distinct from new statements to cover that stuff and to use the index. So just a few more. Let me Yeah. Okay. Just let that go. No and no. And let me open that file in a classical way because I don't remember when I stored it recently. Yeah, here we go. Okay, good. So just a few of them. So that you see how exciting it is to have new stuff in T-SQL. Imagine that I am having my, let's see where to do it. Okay. Yeah. So I got this table and I insert some values, and here is how the table looks like. So I got year, January, February, March, and values, like, yeah, budget or sales or results. And then what I would like to do is, with one single statement, to be able to say which is my best month value, which is my worst month value. And then I can say, okay, give me the greatest of January, February, and March, and the least of January, February, and March. And just by doing that and have like by year, like year and best and worst month, here we go. So that's all cool because you can do that in a good, like in the fastest possible way with those functions. Otherwise, you must write some stuff. You must type some stuff, like, you know, it's yeah, a case could be a good alternative. Then you can do pivot and non-pivot. Yes, you could, but if this is about like millions of rows, then better don't go there because you will feel so disappointed of performance. Or you must cover your table with potentially column store index to be able to run pivot and non-pivot and do some calculations. You can run this with cross apply as well. So yeah, there are ways, but you can compare that with what you could run and get the results immediately. And then, yeah, split has an ordinal already. So yeah, that's cool because you can say, yeah, where ordinal equals to something or order by ordinal. So in this case, you will have additional feature or function of string split, yet more than we have now. Here we go, order by ordinal. Or by ordinal is cool because you can preserve the order of coming data. And date bucket, just the last one, is also cool because it's cool because you could save some I'd say some complexity of your code. You can even optimize somehow so the code could run faster in some ways. So imagine that you must define or you must find the first day of the month of your dates. Like, for example, you could say, just let me remove that part. Yeah, I don't need that so that you can see the consistent result. So I could do data opt. Here we go. So with data opt, I could do like, yeah, month, the same month, then data diff from modified date, and then the initial dates. And then I could say, yeah, please give me the first month of my modified date, or the first day of the month of my modified date. I could do that better with date from parts. So in this case, I'm saying year, first part is year, this part is month, and yeah, this is 1 month. Here we go. I can do the same. Well, you can use date bucket as well. So date bucket makes this dates grouping really easy. So you can see the date time value corresponding to start of each datetime bucket. So you can do that based on the origin parameter or corresponding or starting from that date if the origin parameter was not specified. So in this case, I could do the same just by having that. Here we go. I'm going to do that. I'm going to run that same stuff. Here we go. So I'm saying, please do a date bucket for me, or bucket my dates by month, with the first date of month of modified date. I can do that by using different date types or different parts of the day, like for example, year or quarter or month or week or day or second. So all that works for me. Here we go. It could work if you use, for example, date or week. It could use for minutes, and that could do all really great stuff. And it could be also data time, depending on what you do, or date. Good. So this makes the things really easy when it's about doing dates. We have generate series. Yeah, that's the last one, I promise. So we could have generate series. Here we go. Oh, so nice to generate test data, right? So generate series from 1 with a step of, from 1 to 5. You can say step by default. If it's not, then it's 1. You can say step by default, or you can leave it by default, or you can say, let's say 7, and you could generate a series of data. Cool, right? So we have all those functions which will help us to do better with the code. So in other words, SQL Server 2022 is not about just one feature. It's about building a product or using the next version of the product, which is very cloud oriented, in order to combine the existing data that we have on premise with potential analytics or potential technologies that will help us to maintain a hybrid environment and connect our data with the cloud and get benefit out of the cloud. Why we should trust that? Well, because the development, as soon as I know, the development of SQL Server 2022 is not just about a new version of the product. It's something that I see has been tested and developed in the cloud with millions of instances in Azure Cloud, like for example, Azure SQL databases. So Microsoft basically administer millions of databases in the cloud. So if that has been tested in the cloud, and if they brought back into on-premise version of the product, then that is cool because it's reliable and it gets the benefits of the cloud. So the benefits of the cloud are connected to security, to availability, to scalability primarily. So we could do or gain those benefits in on-prem environment, and you can plan for potential extension of our on-prem environment to the cloud. So it's definitely Azure enabled for disaster recovery, analytics, and security. But there are much more of like changes and features that makes the feeling, that gives the feeling that the product works really fast when you just upgrade to the next version. So data virtualization, last but not least, it opens up a lot of opportunities of creating reporting databases, or like creating a data gateway for your different data types and different data. And of course, extending to SQL language. No doubts about it. It's something that makes developers happy. So we have lots to do from now on. So it's just the beginning of the exploration of the features of SQL Server 2022. So I'm really excited because the next year will be the 2022 year, and I already have questions coming from my clients to, well, we plan for upgrade. Should we actually go to 2022? Well, yeah, definitely. We should try that. We should do some test upgrades, and we should be able to see the differences, So I would say that since 2016, basically, this version 2022 is a major release that we have with so many features in it and with so much stuff which we managed to see in the product. Of course, more will come, and I believe that all those features that you saw, all those features that you saw in the product, like, for example, managed instance and recovery to like getting back and forth, will be something that will come to the product. But anyway, it's really something that is exciting, I would say. So thank you so much. And are there any questions, guys, from Zagreb and from Sofia, Mikhail? Am I alone? I hope not.
We're in a listen mode, so we're here, and yes, are there any questions? I think not for now from Sophia.
Okay. Damien, are you there?
I will unmute. Damir is now here. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes.
So thank you very much. It was a great session. Basically, there are no questions here from the audience, but I have just one question for you. You said about improvements with memory optimized MDB metadata. So I know when this feature was introduced, there was problems with column store indexes. Yes, you cannot use this feature if you get column store. So is this now resolved or not?
No, I don't think it's something that is resolved because it stays with that. But they did some stuff with column store indexes, so it's probably something that we should try now. But honestly, I don't believe that it will be resolved. Probably with some additional configuration that will be resolved in the future, or trace flag, I believe.
Okay, so thank you very much for the session, and see you.
Yeah, thank you, Sofia and Zagreb. I hope you enjoyed the new version of SQL Server 2022, and I hope I will be able to see you soon, like probably after a few weeks in Sofia. Thank you, and yeah, bye-bye. Or how we say, hade in
Thank you,
Norwegian.
Maggie, for the awesome presentation.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.